welcome back for another Not Too Shabby Shop Design Team project. Today's project features the November stamp of the month. It's called Winter Vibes. There's a look at it on the screen. The dies are no longer available, but the stamp set is, and I will have that linked in the description box below. Today's card features an easy design. I wanted to talk a little bit about design, especially for beginner card makers. This one is perfect that anyone could create themselves, beginner, advanced, and it's super quick and easy to mass produce. I have a piece of Copic Express It paper, and I'll be stamping my image using Memento Tuxedo Black ink. Once I get this stamped, I'm going to stamp it twice because I didn't press in one area where you're going to see I'm missing, and so I'll just ink it up a couple more times, making sure that I get that really nice impression. Has nothing to do with the stamp, has everything to do with my ink pad needing to be re-inked. So once I get this stamped, I am going to color it with Copic markers, and this is tip number 1. If you're unsure of ink blending and you're not confident with that, use one marker. There's nothing wrong with coloring with just one marker, or two in some cases. So I'm starting with my B markers. I believe I started with a B0, and then I'm going to blend it out with a B00. I tried to blend a little bit more with my colorless blender. I actually end up bringing in a B0000. I think it's a quadruple 0 to blend out because my colorless blender needs to be refilled. I do add a blue hue. This is something that sometimes I'm in a gray mood, sometimes I'm in a blue mood. It doesn't matter how far in you go. I'm sharing with you. Sometimes I'll just add a little bit of the shading. You'll notice that I'm adding it to the left and the right to make sure that it looks like the highlight is coming from the sun would be directly in front of them. And then I just use that lighter blender to blend everything out. For the buttons, I'm simply going to use that I believe it's a W9 marker. I'm going to use one color for the twigs that are the arms for the snowmen. It's, I believe, an E25. I'll add it to the tree trunk. Boy, I'm having trouble speaking today. And then I'm going to add some violet tones to the scarf and also to the heart that is on this one snowman. And this violet tone is going to be the tone that I'm going to use for my background. So tip number 2 is, instead of reinventing the wheel, use a color that you've used as a complementary color in your coloring for your background. A sky doesn't necessarily always have to be blue. In the case of my card today, I'm going to ink blend some of that violet color using shaded lilac. So that was the inspiration for my background. Of course, I did use the blue on the snowman. I think that it would have blended just a little bit too much, and the snowman would have been a little bit flat on my card if I went with the blue. So the violet for me was the perfect choice. I added some color to the cheeks with either an R20 or an R21 marker, and then I also added that to the rim or to the sash on the hat, and then I used that W9 yet again to color in the hat. For my fence, I'm going to make some mistakes. I was really coloring rather quickly. So I have a W marker, it's up on the screen, or maybe it's a C marker up on the screen, and I'm coloring the inside areas of the fence. So you can see clearly that I have 3 fence posts, but I end up coloring the middle, and now I have to blend it out. But I completely forgot that I was going to be using the coordinating die, which I do have, and that cuts out that section of the fence, so I didn't even need to try to save it. What I was trying to do, just for the sake of explanation, is I was trying to use a lighter blending color so that it didn't appear to be out of order. So it technically should be white, and I just tried to blend it out with the lightest color that I had. So I hope that makes sense to you. I am going to use the die, as I mentioned, and you're not going to see it at all. So that was all for naught. I'm going to use this one color on my Christmas tree. And again, I just wanted to share that this card still comes out absolutely beautiful without worrying about whether you're using the correct dark color, light color, or mid-tone. If you are not there and you don't feel like practicing, this is a quick way to put a card together. Just enjoy the process. Now I'm going to add some dots to the earmuffs, and it ends up being for naught. I end up coming in with my white gel pen because that color just wasn't deep enough for you to see those dots. I wanted that dot for the texture. I'm going to use, this is a number 5, so it's a very fine point. I'm going to use this pen to add some more highlights to the scarf, to the hat, to the snowman, but it's not showing up as well as I like, so I'll come back in a second time and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add more highlights to the tree, and then I'll also go over those areas that were just a little too light for me on the snowman. This is Crystal Stickles. This is a third way to add a little bit of pizzazz to your image. So I did use that Crystal Stickles on the buttons for the snowman and also on the tops of the fence where the snow was. I set this aside to dry, so I did not die cut this right away, but here you can see I'm using the coordinating die. I'm going to run it through my die cutting machine, and that gray that I made a mistake with, that's going to disappear. So here's a look at the die cut image. It cuts beautifully. And now I'm going to use that white gel pen again, and I'm just going to deepen some of those areas. So once the gel pen dries, if you're using a gel pen, this adds just a little bit of character to the images. It's certainly a step that you, if you're not confident in this, that you can skip. But I like to add just a few little highlights to my images, and if they don't show up the first time, I go over them again the second time, and it actually makes it just a little bit darker. I have a piece of cardstock that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. Here's where I'm adding that purple to my background. I have shaded lilac distress ink. The distress ink is more dominant than the oxide. The oxide has more of a chalky feel because of that pigment ink that's in it. So I wanted to make sure I got that depth of color with distress ink. Now you'll notice that I have a stencil here. This is my 4th tip, and that tip is to find stencils. This one happens to be from Papertrey ink, but find stencils that just have an outline to them. So this does not go all the way in the center of this panel. You can see that I'm adding the holly and the berries all the way around. Where it's going over the areas that I previously ink blended, it's going to be a darker shade, and then of course I'm adding that little bit of purple to the bottom. When I did my ink blending, I made sure to go very light in the center, and then I left the bottom white, and that was so that I would have the illusion of snow. So you don't have to use that distress ink over the entire background. And then I added some Brutus Monroe glitter glaze. Now that glitter glaze, I'm going to sing a big hallelujah to Brutus Monroe. This is the first glitter glaze that I've ever had that really, truly lasted. There is a sealing lid that comes with it. There's no press and seal involved in this process. And that glitter glaze actually is well over 1.5 years old, and it was the same consistency as the day that I first used it. So if you're looking for a quality glitter glaze, I'm going to sing and shout for Brutus Monroe and really suggest that you look there for your glitter glaze needs. I'm going to add the sentiment. You notice that I did put my snowman down to see where I was going to place it so that I could get the sentiment in the correct spot. I did not stamp with the shaded lilac distress ink, but I did stamp with the distress oxide ink. So the distress oxide is a pigment ink, and it does stamp much smoother than the distress ink. I added some foam tape to the back of my images, and just like that, that's how quick and easy this card came together. Because there's a little bit of warping due to that glitter glaze, I'm going to add some tape to the back as opposed to going with my liquid glue, which is what I usually use. And I'm going to add it to a top folding card base. Once I get it on there, that is going to complete my card for today. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. I just wanted to share a few tips and tricks for easy card making. I'm going to use my Misti to help me align this panel, and there is my finished card. The stamp is available in the Not Too Shabby shop. Until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Merry Christmas and thanks for watching.